Okay, please silence your phones. And okay. Okay, let me increase the size. Okay, just a quick revisit of our unit test last class. Actually, last week was essentially unit testing. You have to understand there are probably 3 different concepts that you have to understand. The big picture is unit testing. But within that, there are the concepts of dependency inversion. And for accomplishing dependency inversion, what concept do you need to understand? If you want to change when we say dependency inversion, what are we changing? Okay. Only one hand up, 2. It's supposed to be understood by everyone, right? It's the entire purpose of taking the diversion last week was to make you understand, and it made all these colorful drawings. And so anyways, okay, Danny?
The dependency inversion, you're switching from a lower level to a higher level, and instead of coming from the data base, you're coming from the repository.
Okay, so let's okay, so we are going into a database repository, but what is the dependency? What was depending on what, and what are we inverting now? Okay. So why is the controller considered to be a higher level entity versus the database? Okay. How many of you understand why the controller is considered? Brody?
Because the users are interacting with the controller.
Whatever is closer to the user functionality is considered higher level. So the database is, while it provides a useful purpose, it's a data repository, but it stores data, but it's farther away from the user. So it's considered a lower level entity. So when a higher level entity depends on a lower level entity, it's it's problematic because then if we want to change that into something else, instead of having a relational database, in a few years it'll be NoSQL or some other type. Also, for unit testing, we cannot do it directly on the database. It's called, what type of testing is it when we are directly connecting to the database for testing? How many of you know the answer to that? If we don't do this dependency inversion, like in 353, we didn't do dependency inversion, but we did testing, right? So what type of testing is that called? Colton? Integrated. Why is it integrated? Jacob, do you know the answer to that? Why is it integrated rather than unit? The database is a separate entity outside of your application, right? It's running on SQL Server, which is entirely outside your C# application. So when you're bringing in an entity that's entirely outside, it's not, you cannot consider it a unit that stands on itself. Okay, and I think Stephen had mentioned the security module is outside, networking is outside. So anything that's outside of the core application, it's considered you're trying to integrate across units or modules or entities. So now when you've changed your dependency inversion, let me see if I can. Okay, so this is what we were saying was our dependency inversion. So this is our controller. Instead of directly going to the database, we set up this. What is this? It's an interface, right? An interface is what it depends on. It's not depending on the database directly. And so this is the second concept. So first is the concept of dependency inversion. The second is that of an interface. And how does the interface help us?
Get in the middle between the controller, the actual controller, and the database. So the application right now will, so the interface. So we create the class history that will actually connect to the database. So the interface gets in the middle between the actual application and that class. So it's just an action.
So what does the controller now depend upon? What's the dependency on? On the interface. And whichever class implements the interface now can be accessed by the controller. It doesn't depend on any of these. It's essentially the only dependency is on the interface. So if we were to switch databases, all that we need to switch is, well, there'll be another class that implements this NoSQL database or anything else. And everything is accessible to the controller through this interface. And that's what makes us do unit testing, because we brought in the next concept. The third concept was what? What did we have here? The mock, right? Mock data. So where does the mock data reside? This database resides outside on SQL Server. Where does this reside? Inside the application. That's why we can call this unit testing. We're not going outside. So those are the three concepts. What are the three concepts? Okay, dependency inversion, well, the interface, and then mock data. So all of this constitutes unit testing, right? So, okay, so that's the big picture. The actual aspect is running the test and having it make sure you're running. This test is, obviously I'm expecting it to run, and within it there are multiple assertions, and I told you Colton had asked, are we going to do a check of the number of instances, number of rows, like we did in 353. And here we actually went, well, this is where we did the count, and then we went beyond that to looking at a specific instance, a value inside it, and also we finally went even beyond it, right? So how many of you have this working? What did this do? The last assertion. This is the most comprehensive of all the assertion tests. What's this? What's it? We are, what are we testing? It's a very simple thing. What are we testing? Yeah.
So we're testing the actual method that our in the class, or like the populate method, compared to the method that we dumped into this list that lives into this English controller.
So what are we doing? We are passing a set of instructors, right? Data. Okay. So it is populate instructors as whatever, five instructors. And we are passing this data, this is the mock data, we are passing it to what? To which controller was it? Instructor controller, instructors controller, and then what's instructors, which method in instructors controller? It's list all instructors, right? So list all instructors gets that list, and what's it supposed to do? This is instructors represents the model, right? And so it's going to return that model to the view. Now, so what are we saying in the test? We are retrieving, we are running this, where do we call this, right? Here, we are calling instructors controller list all instructors. So, and then we are saying we are getting back the result, and what are we doing with the result? First we are saying it should be a view result, right? That's the basic thing. And what's the next step? We are going into it saying, so what is the model that is being returned? And what's the model? What's the model that it should return? The model is the list of instructors, okay? And so we are then digging even further down into this view model. We are first saying we expect to see a count of 5 instructors that are being returned. And the first instructor, or in this case, instructor ID 1, expected email is Dr. Peace's email. And finally, this is, as I said, the most comprehensive assertion that we are making. We are saying that the mock list that we made up should be what? Equal to the entire list of instructors that's being sent back. So this, we cannot do a more comprehensive test than that, right? And it's actually much more comprehensive than anything we did in 353. And we obviously need to do tests for additions, deletions, modifications, which we'll come to after the break. But final note before I move on, but for this to happen, and I'm expecting all of you to have it running, right? And one is to have it work, the other is to understand how it works. And I want you to have that understanding, otherwise we are going through an exercise in futility. Anything, I hope you try your best to understand, and the way you do it is by actually trying. Yes?
At the bottom of my question statement, is equal bottom structure list. So my test works, but I have a text to go the bottom structure list saying that you can't convert it to
Well, you have to check it out. I cannot answer that right now. But you cannot say a test works if it's a red, squiggly underline.
like you have the check mark.
The problem with that is we build it two different ways. One way you build it as a list, and one way you build it a different way up top. You initialize it differently. So you have to just initialize it the way it's a visual.
Over here?
Yeah, so, when you were showing us this the first time, you called the method directly, like put it inside the return, you called the method, and then you were showing us this is not in a word, and then you deleted that, and then you pulled it throughout the
But somewhere like actually it's not I took the repository of
Okay. Okay. Anyways, I have to. Well, the last thing I want to show is it's mainly a review. For this to work, we needed to do one additional piece. Basically, it's trying to compare each of the objects in the two lists. How does it do the comparison? We have to help .NET do it. And what did we have to do? There was one additional piece that I did at the very last 3-4 minutes, and I actually had you stay back, so maybe that will at least make you remember it. What did you have to do, Carter? Yeah, the compare to, and where did we put the compare to? You have to put it in the class itself, so you have to go on the models. Where is my instructor? Oh, it's in his own folder. Okay. Okay, so we had to implement this interface, right? So this is an interface that Microsoft or .NET provides us. So we are saying, we are telling .NET if you want to compare, and it's this interface iComparable has how many methods does it have? As soon as we introduced it, we got an error saying we had to implement this compare to method. And so we are basically saying we are comparing two instructor objects, and the way that it should be compared is if the two instructor IDs were the same, we were saying return 0, indicating that they are the same. Otherwise, we said return 1, indicating that they are not the same. Okay, so you'll have to give this method for it to work. Anyways, I'm going to stop there. And I'm expecting when I look at your project that if you run this, you should get the green, but there are multiple sub-tests, sub-assertions within this one test of, so actually even saying should return view for list is really not quite correct. It's basically should return the same list of instructors as what the mock list is. Okay. The other pieces that I'd asked you to look at were adding, deleting, and editing course offering. So how many of you have this in green now? Hopefully most of you. Okay. Because that is something that when you're submitting your exam, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at, is having the test in green. The other pieces that, so remember next class, please come in a little earlier by 8:20 so that you can start. The other pieces that I'd asked you to work on, one was to add, so we've looked at add instructor, but we have not looked at more complex forms of adding, and the most complex of our classes I'll just open up Visual Studio, the class diagram. Okay, the most complex class that we have is course offering. So I'd asked you to look at how you would add course offering, delete course offering, modify course offering, and there is the part about model validation, and there are constraints. And again, Stephen had asked me about this. We'll discuss this after the break, but for now we are just going to look at how we can add, delete, and modify. Okay, so I'd asked you to look at it and try it out. How many of you have it working? Okay, you have to have it working by before you come for next class. So let's try to look at what we'll do is we'll use add instructor, which is a simple class, a simple functionality. It's a simpler case because it's just one class and there is really no other connecting link. So let's do this. I have about 50 minutes left, so I'm going to go with that, and I'll use the instructors, the add. We have add and delete an instructor. We didn't do edit. I'll get to edit this time with course offering. Whenever you have add and edit, it's going to be you'll find how many methods are going to find in the controller. There'll be two. Why do we have two? One is the get to show the user a view, and then the user provides the data and submits. That's the post. So you'll have two. Methods for both insert and for edit. For now, we'll go with the simple add over the add sync. Though both actually act in similar ways. After the break, I want to focus a little more on the async functionalities. But for now, you can go with either one of them. I'm fine with it. So essentially, you'll see that whenever you're adding so you have the view that's displayed for the user, and this view is also going to have view data for providing any drop-down lists. As far as the post is concerned, the easiest is to bind it. You can get the data individually from each of the inputs, but it's easier if you just bind it to the entire object and bring it in. The same concept will apply to the for edits as well. For edits and deletes, you're going to see when you're going to try to pull the object that's pre-existing, right? So that's why you're sending this ID in. Okay. And typically we are redirecting to a list. So in our for course offering, the list that I'm going to use is this search result list. Okay, so that provides me a list of all the courses when I go through the search. Okay, let me see if I have this accessible or not. When I say accessible through my Okay, I'm going to do this fairly quickly, so you'll have to follow along. My assumption is you've at least shared layout is where I'm trying to put this in, so that I can just get to search course offerings, search course offerings. I do have it here, so if I were to so what I want to do is to add to have an option of adding new course offerings. So what did we do last time with add instructor? Yes.
Put an add player or an add instructor button with the list of the instructors.
Okay, so I went into list instructors, and at the very end, I put in this button which allowed me to add a new instructor. So I'm going to copy this and put it at the end of my course offerings search result. So I have my table, and where does this go? I have my curly braces here. This curly braces is just for checking if there is a model count or not. This adding is independent of the condition, so I'll put it inside or outside. If it's independent of the condition, I'll put it outside. So I'm adding a new course offering. Okay, instead of this being add instructor, this is add course offering, and instead of instructors, this is course offerings. Okay, so now I have to go into my course offerings controller. And there you have to sort of visualize it from two perspectives. One is the perspective of the view. The second is the perspective of the controller method. So I'll start from the controller method. So I'll say, let's see, where is my controller method? I'll close out some of these. Okay. So what do I want to do? I want to set up. This is going to be a HTTP. The first of the two methods is a get or a post. It's a get to show. It's getting the view to show it to the user. Okay. So so I'm going to say public. Pretty much all our returns are iAction result, and I'll call it add course offering. Okay. Now, what I want to return for this, I'm just going to say return view so that it stops complaining. And what's the name of the view? When I just say return view, it'll be what? It should be the same name as the name of the method, right? So if I said, if I put in the name of the view, then I can have a view that's named differently from the method. But here, it has to be the same. So I can right-click, add view, add course offering. It's going to be an empty one. I'll just say add. After I add this view, I'm basically going to use whatever I have in add instructor so that I can modify that rather than create everything from scratch. Okay, so this is the view that I have, and one of the things that I need at the very top of this view, there are some references that help the UI. So what do I need to add at the very top of this? Good. At model course offering. Now, whenever I have a list, I add something in before I have the class name. What is it that I usually add in here? Okay, IEnumerable. In this case, do we do that? The answer is no, because we are not going for a list. It's a single object reference. Okay, now what we are doing here from this point on, I can, well, if you want, you can keep a title, add course offering. What's this? Okay, as I said, I don't want to type everything in. I want to use whatever I had an add instructor to sort of modify that. So I'm going to say form action. Okay, so I have a CRN. After that, I don't need all of this. So I'm going to take form action. Well, I'll copy this. It's a relatively small one, so up to here. The entire open closed form. Okay. For add instructor. Okay, this is going to be a template. So instead of add instructor, what's the action that I have here? Okay, add course offering. And so I need to change some of these here. So what's the first one? So you need to be aware of what class you're dealing with, right? So we are dealing in this case with course offering. So course offering has course offering ID. Is that the first value that the user enters? I know you should know very well that's coming from the database. So CRN, okay. So let's see, CRN is the first value, okay. And this is for now, I'll just put it as, I don't know how it's generated by the university, so I'll just keep it as CRN. And input label, the input ASP for CRN, and if you want to use the binding, this is how you want to set it up. Otherwise, the binding won't happen. Okay, so this, it should, I should say add, well, I'm the wrong class, Control C, the wrong, so this is not the one that I want to work with. Okay. Okay, I'm working with this. So over here it's CRN. Okay. So how is the intelligence showing up for CRN? Somebody other than Nate or Abdul Rahman? Okay, Rob?
Because at the top of this view, before you have the model was offered.
Yeah, if you didn't add this in, it's not going to show up. That's why you want to add it in. Okay. Okay, so let's go with the other columns here, or the other properties. Let's see, what's the second one? The days. Okay, this is something that I want to show you how you can actually. So let's say you have for now I said Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday. Also seen some cases of Monday, Tuesday. So there are some classes that meet every day of the week, is it? No. So is it only these two options? You have all 5 days. Okay, so I'll also put that in. Okay, so maybe we should have individuals as well. Okay, I'll just bring in one more option so that you can see how to Tuesday, Wednesday. So if you don't have values in the database, how do you bring it in for a view? So let's say we have 3 different options. I'll try to introduce that if we have some time. I have to bring in this concept. It's called a view model. It's not very complicated, but it's very helpful. Anytime you're working, you want to manipulate views. Okay, so let's say, okay, so how do we do that? Let's see, how many minutes do I have? Okay, 35 minutes. So the concept of a view model, so I'm going to put this under models. So I have my models directory. Okay, where is my models directory, right? So under models, I'm going to create a new directory, a folder called view models. So these models are created entirely for the purpose of views, of manipulating views. So view, uppercase V, uppercase M, view models. So inside of it, I'm going to create a view model, which I'm calling days of week view model. So I'm going to right-click on the folder, add a class, days of week view model. Okay, so it creates it as a class, but it's entirely for, that's why you sort of suffix it with view model. We'll see some more of this after the break, but I just want to introduce this. If you want to have drop-downs that are not coming off the database, sometimes you might want to do this. And this will have just one one attribute or property, public string. I'm going to call it days of week. Okay, actually, this was supposed to be days of week and not day of week, so I'm going to change the class name to plural. And usually when I do that, I also try to change the name of the file to correspond to it. Okay, so days of week view model is the name of the file and the class. Days of week is the string. Get set. Okay, so how do we go about using this? Okay, since I'm having this in the view model, I'll have to have a using statement which uses all of this. Okay. I'm going back into my controller, course offering controller. And at the very top, I'm going to introduce a using statement using the view model. And the way I use this now, the name of this is, what did I call it, days of week. This has become very large. Okay, so this, so inside of add course offering, what do I have? I'm going to have a list of days of week view model. So I'm going to call this days of week view model list. Okay, now inside of it, what I need is I need to create objects now. So days of week view model. So each one is going to have days of week. Equals, and I don't have a constructor. When I don't have a constructor, the way I can give values is using these curly braces, and inside of it I can use this. Okay. So what am I doing? I'm creating a new object and giving specific values. MWF. Okay, so I created this days of week view model with the value for days of week as being MWF. Guess I need to put this semicolon outside. Okay, so this object that I created should be a part of the list. How do I make that a part of the list? Days of week list dot add, and I add this days of week view model. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to add a couple more values here. So I used Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, and the third option is I'll just go with all days of the week. So there are three different options that I'm going to add in. So I'm going to say, so how do we, so this is a manual drop down that I want to create. So when you're connecting something from the controller to the view for a drop down, how do you do that on the controller side? What do you need to create on the controller? Pardon? Okay, view data, and within square brackets, it's I'll say days of week, and what's on the right side? New select list. New select list, and the first parameter in the select list is, when we got it from the database, we said database dot something, but here, where are we getting that list from? See, days of week, view model list, right? And then the second thing was whatever we wanted to, with what was the value field, and then what is the text field. So what is the value field here? Days of week. What was it inside? What did we call it inside here? This is just days of week. Okay, so where is my? So just to avoid the, where is the controller? Okay, so to avoid the, so I call this days of week. So what is seen as the value by the user, as well as the value that's passed in, are the same in this case, right? There's no ID. Okay. And to prevent, well, this view data here, I don't want that to become confusing for you. Instead of having this as the same name, let me call this something else. Days of week values, I'll just call it, so that you can, so these are the values, use uppercase V, that show up for the drop-down list. Okay, so this is as far as the drop-down for what are we setting this up as the drop-down? This is for the days. So I'm going to delete this stuff here. I wanted to set up a drop-down that doesn't come from the database. Okay, so for any time you're setting up a drop-down, it is use the select statement, right? So instead of department, this is days, days of week. This is the label. So right here, instead of ASP4, this is going to be days, and view bag dot. Instead of departments, it is, what did we call the view data? Okay, days of week values. This has to be exactly as is, whatever you have in the view data. So if I go back in here, view bag dot, days of weeks values, and that's going to be your drop down. Okay. Let's proceed a little faster now with the other drop-downs. What are the other values we need? Let's go to course offering. With start time and end time, obviously those I can just get from without having to do, I can just set them up as simple inputs like this. So basically, most of your add options are going to be either input or select. Input will be, so the third one is start time. And the IntelliSense should show up for start time. Similarly, end time. The label is simple text, which you don't have to have show up exactly, but the other input down here has to be the exact name that's the property of the class, end time. Okay, so we have these set up. What's the next one? Start date, and then we have start date, end date, instructor ID, and course ID. Okay. You understand what we are doing here, right? It's fairly straightforward. It's okay. So okay. After this, the last two are instructor and course. So how do we get those? Yeah. Okay. So let's put in the last two. I'm just copying the days so that I have it twice. So the label obviously changes from days to instructor, and this is for instructor ID is what I send over, and the last one is course. This is going to be course ID. Okay, do you understand this? Right? But what the user should see is a drop-down list of, instead of viewback dot days of week values, this should be viewback dot instructors plural, and then this should be viewback dot courses. Obviously, we don't as yet have these to populate. So where do we get that from? Go back to the controller. So you have to sort of visualize how it goes back and forth between the two. So we need the view data now. View data for this is instructors, new select list. This time, where is it coming from, this list? From the database, right? The instructors on the database. We are not, this one was something that we have made up. It's not coming from the database. So database dot instructors, and then we have to specify the two things, right? What is it? The first is what is the actual value that gets sent behind the scenes, and what is the second is what's the value that the user sees. So what's the value that gets sent behind the scenes? Instructor ID, and what's the value that the user should see? They should see the name, and this is where well, one of the things that like if you want to see both the first and the last name, one thing that you can do in the instructor class is to say, so let's say that go into the instructor class, and let's say you want to you can set up a property that says public string instructor full name. I'm setting it up just below last name, and what I'm going to say is get, it's just going to get this instructor first name plus some space I just want this as a get method. Trying to remember syntaxes. Pardon, outside the bracket. Okay. I've forgotten this syntax for okay, let me just check it very quickly on my practice one which I tested out. Somebody had asked for a project and I was trying to, okay, let me just check it to see. What I'm trying to do is instead of just getting the last name or first name, I want to just set up a property that allows me to get both. And I forgot the syntax for it, so I'm going to, this is not the one. Okay, this is the syntax here. I have to say get, I don't want to set it because setting means I will be inserting the value. I'm just getting the values, so I have to add return to it. So get within curly braces, return, so I don't think I have any semicolon, so semicolon is here. Okay, let me get back to this. So I have to say get, and then return is inside of the curly braces. And then the semicolon is here. Okay. No, it's not going to add it to the database. It's only for the view purpose. Okay, so let's go back to, so I've just added this in as a property in instructor, but I'm not adding to the database. Okay, so now if I go to this here, the reason I added this was what I want the user to see. There's my control right here. What do I want the user to see? Instructor full name. So instructor full name. Okay, I used in lowercase, so this has to be exactly as is. And lastly, I want the courses. So I have to do the same thing. Okay, so I have my 3 drop-downs, which now have to correspond to the drop-downs in the view. Okay. So all this, hopefully this is clear. Okay, so if I were to run this, I'm just going to test the FIST. I'll start without debugging. So if I go to search course offerings, I should be able to, at the bottom, see add view. If I click on that link, it should give me this view where I should, I first want to ensure that I have it show up for me. Okay, so you should be seeing this view, okay, with drop-downs, which so anytime you have drop-downs outside of the database, this is the easiest way that I've found. The others typically have been more complex. The start time, end time, start date, end date, your drop-down of instructors, this drop-down of courses. Okay, now if you click on Add New Instructor, obviously we don't have anything to handle it, so if you do that, it's going to give an error saying the page was not found. So what we need to do is go into, so what do we need to do? Go into your controller, which is course offering controller. Do all of you have this show up for you, this one? It should, right? We didn't do, well, what we did was fairly straightforward. I just took, as far as the controller is concerned, the method, all that I've done is set up, the work that I've done is for drop-downs, right? There's nothing that I've done other than setting up drop-downs. And then as far as the view is concerned, what did I do? I went in and set up, this is basically from add instructor, I just added it in. The main changes are the model you're referencing should obviously be different, should be course offering. The action is add course offering rather than add instructor. And it's a post method saying we are sending it to the second method in the controller. And then this is all formatting here, but the important part is this tag, which sets up, so if you don't have drop downs, go with this tag here. It just connects it up with, and it uses formatting based on the data type. So if it's time, you could see that if you go here, it allows you to sort of enter it as a time. If it's a date, it opens up a calendar for you to make a selection. Okay, now once you have that, you have to go in and handle this. So how do we handle it? And I'm going to handle it in a very simple way. Later on, we'll go into validation, but for now, we are just going to do. So I'll do, it's instead of HTTP GET, it's going to be, the name of the method is exactly the same. Okay, so it'll be, okay. So instead of HTTP GET, it's going to be HTTP POST. Okay, and the second difference is going to be over here. I'm going to bind it, and I'm going to bind it, it should be showing up, I'm going to bind it to, let's see, just to make sure that this is going, I'm going to say return. I'm going to return it by redirecting it to a particular view. What is the view that I want to redirect it to? Redirect to action. What am I redirecting? Where did we start before this? We went to search course offerings, plural, so search course offerings. Okay. Now I'm going to bind all the attributes that I'm getting. So what are all the attributes that I'm going to be looking at? I'm looking at course. I think we can go without course offering ID, but the convention seems to be that the primary key is included, so I'm going to keep that. Does it have to have? Don't need to bring anything in. Okay, course offering ID, CRN. What's the third column? Days. Oops. Fourth column is start time. Okay, it has to be within quotes. That's so bind. I'm going to actually the square brackets come before bind. Some of the syntax, just make a note of it. The square brackets comes before. So then there I'll have another. Okay, so now maybe it will. Okay. Start time, end time, and all of this is within double quotes. And I'm going to break this up into two so that you can see it. Okay, so start time, end time. Let me just go here. So the next one is course ID and instructor ID. Okay, the syntax is a little strange, so let's just revisit that a little bit. So this is the parentheses for the parameter of the method. Opens here, closes here. Then I have the square brackets, and the name of this method is bind. I'm binding all these attributes or properties of the class. Course offering ID, CRN, day, start time, end time. I think I missed out start date, end date. So start date. So you have to match all of them together, and then after this, the ending of the square brackets, before the ending of the entire parameter list, we have to specify the object. So what object does this bind to? It's course offering. So course offering is the class, and then course offering lowercase c is the object. Okay. So this is the object that's getting created. Now, what do we need to do once we get, so all these values are coming from where? From the form, right? So they come from the form, they're getting, they're now coming into all of these parameter values. Now, what do we do with this? Okay, we need to first go to the database, and this is the simplest version, courses dot, I'm going to say add. As I said, I'm not even looking at the asynchronous version. Okay, so it's actually not courses, but course. Okay, and database dot and after it gets added, I'm saying redirect it to the search. Right. So if you're having any problems while you're doing this, you have to put breakpoints at 3 different places. One is the get method, then the view, and then the post method to see if it's all coordinating it. So if I were to run this now, if you have an empty get method, yeah, if you're populating without any drop downs, then you would have an empty get method. You'll just have the view alone to show up. Okay, I'm just going to use some CRM all 5 days of the week to make it really hard for you. Let's see, at 7 a.m. Okay, we'll go up to 9. Okay, that's the minimum amount of time you need to do anything meaningful. Okay, so 2019, guess I could, okay. Okay, upkeep Dr. Peace, and then systems, okay, advanced IT auto. Okay, I didn't change it here. It should be add new course offering. Okay, so it redirected me to search. Okay, did it get added? And the answer is yes. Yes.
How this fail if the instructor is not qualified?
No, it won't fail. It should probably do that check. So which means that if we wanted to be only somebody qualified, then we would have, it would be a more complex logic for the drop-down list. Okay, but what you need to add in, which I'm not going to do, is the delete option, which is easy, right? Okay, the edit is very similar to this. In fact, you can use, literally you can change this from add to edit. The only difference will be instead of adding, what are you doing? You'll be doing an update operation. What I'm going to do is I'll try to record a session. It will probably be 15 minutes or less. I'll record it for editing, but for deleting, you should be able to do that. So what would you have to do for so editing and deleting? We need to have 2 buttons here for each row. Okay, so if you click on delete. We did this with instructor, so you should be able to do it very easily. Okay, so my expectation is you have that working. For edit, it is again another button, so there will be 2 buttons, one for edit, one for delete. And when you click on the delete, it will bring you back into the controller. The difference with the edit is that with delete, you will only need one method here. For the edit, you'll literally have this get method with all of this getting repeated. So if all of this drop-down information is getting repeated, what is the object-oriented way of dealing with it? You'll put all of this code inside of what? So create a method, right? I'll call it private. Do we need to return anything? No. So I'll say method to populate drop-down list. Okay, so what does it consist of? All of these view data. So if I take it out of here, how will I use it here inside of this? I will just call populate drop-down list. So when you're doing your for your edit, what do you think you'll do? You'll call populate drop-down list and then return the view. Okay, so I'll record that as like a 15-minute discussion and post it by this early afternoon, and you can reference it. But before coming to take your exam, I'm expecting you to have done that. Okay? Yes. Yeah.
If you were trying, like if it's a private employee,
no, there's no return statement required. All this is doing is getting you the list of view data. And the reason is I don't want to do this all over again for the edit operation. Okay.
Yes, I have a point of clarity. I did everything exactly for the drop-down list that you said, but I don't have it for some reason.
You probably didn't add the, go back to your controller. Okay, for each of the objects, you'll have to, okay, did you do an add?
Yeah.
Okay, so case of weak values, okay.
I don't have them for instructor courses either.
So none of the drop-downs are showing up?
No, yeah. This one, the instructor's one has like an arrow, but it's just like
okay, so go back to your view. Let's see the. Okay, the thing is, it's not ASP input. It's ASP. Where is the? It's called ASP. Select. It's input is so the this is select.
And then are all of them are select or just
the drop downs are select. So
That's that one.
you're not giving me, but it's
okay, rerun it and see if it's because sometimes it's C-sharp.
yeah, there's no way.
Yes, I'm having two now.
Did I have you? Go down to instructor and see if it's showing up. Today, not tomorrow. No, as of now, it's for today.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to see what the obvious things are. Let's see. Is it, did you use singular or plural?
Oh, where at?
Right here, it's plural, so this has to be plural here.
Okay.
So that's, and then for some reason this is not showing up.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's, by days of pockets, but it's fault here.
Going too quick.
Okay, I think that's
Okay, thank you so much.
With group 4, our solution was being a little goofy, so I created another one called Group 4 Solution Test. I don't know if you can do that.
don't call it test.
Yeah, I know, but I just was using that as a name temporarily until we could get it.
Okay.
And eliminate the other
Okay.
solution.
Okay.
We're having some connectivity issues. So it's working now with the first one. I just have to delete the other solution and rename the testing as a Group 4 solution.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like whenever I ran my test code,
So now it makes sense. I would create a property that's the get date now to access in a form to populate the current date time as the clock in time. That's how that would work.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw that online and I was like, I couldn't figure out how to implement that. But now it's all connected.
Okay, that's good.